Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to our fall interview series. This is the last interview that we're doing before Christmas begins. So no more fall, it's winter time now. And it has been an excellent opportunity to get together with fantastic young people from across the nation and to hear some of their thoughts on what's currently happening in the state of politics and who are making a big difference in the conservative movement. And so last week I had State Representative-elect Michael Davis on. This week I have Cooper Guyon de Chemilly, there we go, who actually is a young Trump supporter from the state of Georgia. He volunteers his time with young GOP groups and is the author of the book, Our Broken Nation, a 15-year-old's case to save America. So Cooper, thank you for coming on. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good, and thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure, and thank you for everything that you're doing for the conservative movement.
Oh, thank you. So like I've asked my other guests, what made you want to get into politics, even at such a young age?
I really think it's interesting because I'm a big Trump supporter, but when I saw in 2016 how divided the two parties were, I knew it was time to jump in and start getting involved, and Trump really engaged a lot of young people, and I could say that I'm one of those people, but just seeing the divisiveness in politics and the lack of common sense really drew me into getting involved.
Excellent to hear. So we'll talk about your book in a bit, but I do want to ask you, so many young people are getting involved in politics and, in the conservative movement, and I don't believe we've ever seen anything like this in the history of the United States. So why do you think this is happening?
Well, I think we've seen it once in American history, and that's 1776. That was the last time that we had such a large involvement of pro-liberty Americans that are young and getting ready, because the founders of our country were 20 and some that were 19. So I think that we're bringing back that rhetoric that we're in a fight for our country, and people are realizing that at such a young age and are getting involved.
Yeah, I have to agree with you 100% there. And it didn't pop in my mind there for a second about how young people were involved in the revolutionary movement back in 1776. So where do you personally align yourself in the Republican Party? Policy-wise, that you could say is associated with certain politicians who represent them so well. So let's say John McCain or John Boehner, Ron Paul, or even President Trump. But where do you see aligning yourself with policy?
So I definitely am aligned a lot with Ron Paul. I call him the best president we never had. I am a big believer in ending the Federal Reserve and replacing it with a common sense, modern gold standard. I believe in the Fair Tax Act, and I'm very libertarian minded, but I believe that that is what the Republican Party was made to be, was a liberty minded party. And my goal in politics is to restore that in restoring America.
Right. So you say you want to end the Federal Reserve. How would we end it?
Well, that's obviously like a bold thing to say. And honestly, when I first heard Ron Paul say that, I thought this guy was nuts. So it takes a lot of elaborating to talk about. And in my book, I have a chapter that talks just about it. But I really think that in replacing the Federal Reserve and the central banking system, because, Vladimir Lenin has a quote that central banking is essential to accomplishing socialism. And that is currently what we have in the Federal Reserve is central banking. So I think we should break it up and create a national gold standard that instead of printing endless money that has no value, we can print money that has actual value and tangible value.
Do you consider yourself an economist?
I'm big into economics. I understand the study. For my book, I put at the very end that it references the U.S. budget, because during quarantine I read the entire United States federal budget and studied it extensively and wrote the way I think we should be handling things on a fiscal side for this country. So yes, I would.
Excellent points to hear. One of the things that Representative-elect Madison Cawthorn showed us, and we'll talk about him in just a little bit. One of the things that he showed us from his orientation is that the United States federal government is taking in about $3.5 trillion a year. That's about average. And they're spending about 4.4 trillion, which means we're going into debt. So where do you draw the line, or where should you say we should start cutting spending?
I draw the line at saying that we need a budget cap. The state of Georgia has one, and we cannot overspend. And I think that it's essential that Congress passes a balanced budget amendment so that whenever we're taking in already too much money from the taxpayers, apparently it's not enough and they have to print more and more, and it's not working. The dollar's inflating as we speak. The value of the dollar is getting lower and lower, and it's harming the economy. And a lot of people want to talk about climate change, but I believe that the greatest threat to our generation is the national debt, because next year we're going to spend more on the interest of our national debt than we are on our defense spending, and that's what bankrupts countries.
Exactly. All right, so let's dive into your book, because I'm excited to talk about your case of saving this country. If you could share a little bit of the background of why you've decided to write this book.
So I've always been a talker. I talk all the time, and my dad would always tell me that I should write down what I have to say. Never told me to write a book or anything. But last October in 2019, sorry, I just got a phone call. That's my bad. In October of 2019, I started writing a book. I sat down one day and I said, I'm going to write a book. And that's what I did. And I just kept going. And when Corona hit and we had to go into quarantine, I really took off with the book, and I finished it in about March and published it in May. So it just kind of came to me. You know, it was one of those things that you weren't sitting down like, I'm going to write a book. I just sat down and started writing, and that's what it turned into.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, so tell us exactly what you're talking about in this book, and then I'm going to ask you in a little bit. Share an excerpt from your book that you think is going to be vital for people to hear.
So my book is basically laying out policies and issues that I felt needed to be covered and my voice needed to be heard on these issues. And I talk about immigration, I talk about the Second Amendment, and I talk about solutions to these things and how we can find bipartisanship within protecting liberty and protecting capitalism. And I feel like if we can get back to the days of we just want what's best for America, that's when we can start getting things done.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I ask you to read that excerpt, what policies do you think we could be bipartisan on, even with the radical left and the Democrats really shifting forward towards socialist policy towards some of these issues?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Whenever I wrote my book, I think we were at a time in the country when we were trying to start coming together, but then Corona hit and things got even more divisive. But you cannot be bipartisan with people who hate the country. And I don't believe in crossing the aisle for the radical left. But senators like Joe Manchin from West Virginia, I think those are the real Democrats that we are going to be able to work with. But in regards to the radical left, I don't think we can work with them. But essentially, I do believe that in bipartisan immigration reform, obviously people that believe in open borders, we cannot agree with them. But something that's a common sense path to citizenship and also protecting our borders. My dad came to this country from France when he was 17, and he did it the right way, and he's on a path to citizenship now. And I think that we need a strong path for citizenship because we're a country built on immigrants.
Exactly. So read us that little excerpt from your book that you think is going to be vital for people to hear.
Okay, so I'll just read you guys the first chapter of the first paragraph of the first chapter. It's the first chapter is called Our Broken Nation. The state of our nation is broken. I do not say this with hatred towards the United States. I'm a true patriot. I love my country, which is why I care so deeply that it is broken. This great nation has endured a lot, and I truly believe we can weather much more. But to see the state which we are in, it saddens me. I would not be writing this book if I did not think that we could fix our broken nation. It will take a lot of work to fix this country, but I believe that there's nothing America cannot accomplish. In the next paragraph, I go on to elaborate about the $23.3 trillion debt, the Federal Reserve, and the economy, and listing more reasons why we are a broken nation.
Mm-hmm. And of course, that debt's going to keep inflating unless we get some common sense policy out of Congress. And I know you mentioned that the state of Georgia caps the budget, so you can't overspend. I know here in my state of Washington, we have the same thing. We have a balance of budget law. And I wish Congress would do the same thing, because obviously the federal spending is getting way out of hand. So we discussed earlier about young people getting involved in the process. And of course, as you know, North Carolina's 11th Congressional District elected Madison Cawthorn. He's now becoming the new face of young Republicans in the GOP. And of course, he has actually come out in a Washington Examiner interview. He's blasting both parties because both parties, Republicans and Democrats, tend to follow what their party wants instead of doing what's best for America. And the point of doing what's best for America, not in hopes of getting reelected, because that's not their focus. How do you view this?
Well, I really like Madison Cawthorn, because when I was just finishing up my book was when he bursted out on the scene with this message that it's okay to be Republican and attack some Republicans. I have a chapter in my book called The Devil of American Politics, and I call it the political party system, the two-party system. And because for too long, partisan politicians just want to kiss the ring and not go back and fight for the voters that elected them. And I think Madison Cawthorn is bringing a unique perspective to politics of he doesn't care about getting reelected. He cares about serving his constituents. And I think that's a rhetoric that I want to bring into politics, and that is a lot more common sense and young people are bringing into the conservative movement.
Excellent. And of course, I know that a lot of young people that I have spoken with, they care more about what's going on with the national debt more than any of those other issues that you mentioned as being the biggest threat to America these days. We've got two Senate races in Georgia coming up. David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. We still don't know at this point if Trump is going to win the election. I mean, everything's up in the air at this point. So how important do you view these races on a national scale level? How well do you view these?
I think that they are the most important elections in Georgia history. I would go as far to say that. I'm currently working for a PAC that knocks doors 6 days a week for both candidates. And it's just so essential that conservatives mobilize, because I firmly believe to the bottom of my heart that there was massive fraud in the past presidential election. Whether it will be exposed or not, that's beyond my knowledge. And I don't think I'm getting nominated to the Supreme Court tomorrow, so nothing I can do about that anymore. But there's something that every Georgian and people from across the country can do about these Senate races, and it's mobilize and get out and vote and turn out younger voters, because it is just so crucial that we do not give the Senate to Chuck Schumer. All he has to do is give a simple order and the filibuster is gone. And then the floodgates are opened for massive Green New Deal legislation and banning of assault rifles and taxes on our ammo. And that's not something that I want. And I know that's something that's not good for America. So it is a fight of our lives here in Georgia right now.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I've been looking at too is that even if we reelected Perdue and Loeffler, which would be a miracle, seeing that I don't know how Georgia could have gone for Biden. I just don't really see that. Do you think that senators like Mitt Romney or Lisa Murkowski or Susan Collins, are they going to be sticking with the Democrats on a few issues?
Yeah, and that's something that's really worrying me. Something that I'm big on, especially in our state, is the Second Amendment. My family are gun owners, and we love guns. in Georgia. And to think that there is candidates like Mitt Romney and Lisa Murkowski, senators like them, that are going to flip on gun issues, that are going to flip on healthcare issues. And I wouldn't be as worried for the Green New Deal. I think that's something all Republicans can say no to, but it's scary. And I do think that they will be flipping on certain issues, and as they have during the Trump administration, like when John McCain voted to keep Obamacare. So that it's going to be a fight. And if they get the Senate, even if David and Kelly win, we're going to have to worry about these kind of senators and vote them out of office in 2 years.
Yes, of course. I cannot stand some of these people. I think sometimes it makes me wonder if some of the Trump Republicans were kind of not thinking. But I mean, at least in Utah, where you've got Mitt Romney, I believe his Mormon faith kind of captures the audience more in Utah more than his policies. So that's honestly one of the things that is going to be of interest to see what happens in 4 years when he is up for re-election. Something came up a few days ago where Georgia Governor Brian Kemp has supposedly been dealing with China. And that's the reason why he's not doing anything about getting the election overturned in Georgia. How do you view this these new details that came out a few days ago?
So listen, I mean, I've met Brian. I know people who have been personal friends with him for many years. Brian Kemp is a good man. We can say whatever we want politically about him, but Brian Kemp is a good man. Whether I'll be supporting him in his re-election for governor in the Republican primary, I don't know yet. But I would not put that. I do not believe that is a true accusation. I haven't seen any evidence to it, and I don't think he's the kind of man that will sell out his state or his country.
All right, good view on that. All right, so we're going to get ready to go. Cooper, I want to thank you for coming on, and it's great to discuss your book. We will put a link in our description to Amazon where it's being sold. And thank you for coming on. Do you have any last words?
Thank you so much for supporting this great show, and thank you so much for supporting me. My book is available on Amazon, Our Broken Nation, a 15-year-old's Case to Save America, for $7.99. It was a bestseller for 3 weeks in political commentary, new releases, and I appreciate your support. People in Georgia, get out and vote for the January 5th runoff. Thank you very much.
All right. We're going to get ready to go. Thank you for coming on once again. To our audience, thank you for joining us for these past 5 weeks. This has been fun. We're now going to get ready to start celebrating Christmas and doing all kinds of fun stuff. Make sure to follow us on Facebook at The Freedom File, Parler at The Freedom File, and Instagram at The Freedom File. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us. Have a great day.